Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katrina and I'm the School Liaison Officer for Downing College, and I've organised this subject admissions webinar for economics for you today. So let's get started. So first of all, why are we running this webinar? So as I said, my name is Katrina, I'm the School Liaison Officer, and my role is to help students like you to understand the admissions process to Cambridge, to encourage you to think about applying to Cambridge, and hopefully some of you will come and join us at Downing and Cambridge in the near future. So what are we going to look through today? First of all, we're going to start with the admissions process. So I'm going to give you an overview of what you need to do if you want to apply and how to go through that. Then I'm going to hand over to Michael Ashby, who's going to talk you through the economics course and what he's looking for in applicants. Then I'm going to hand over to Thomas, who's one of our current second-year economics students, and he's going to talk to you about what it's like studying here at Cambridge. So a few things to remember throughout the sessions then. The session is going to be recorded and we will put it on the website in a few weeks, so do have a look out for that. And there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. So for any questions that you have, please do use the Q&A box and not the chat box. And we have our student ambassador in the background who's going to be answering all of your questions. So do keep going back to the Q&A box and checking if your question has been typed an answer. And we will also have a Q&A after all three speakers, and we'll answer lots of questions there as well. So what is Downing College? So we're organising the event for you today, but what are we? So we are one of the 31 Cambridge colleges that make up the University of Cambridge, and that's a picture of our site in the centre of Cambridge. So we were founded in 1800. We're the 17th college to be founded out of those 31. And we're a medium-sized college, so we have around 450 undergraduate students, and we take around 120 new students each year. And that's for all subjects taught at the University of Cambridge, and of course, including economics. So the admissions process then. So what am I going to cover? I'm going to talk to you about kind of the role of the departments and the role of the colleges. So what is Downing responsible for and what are the economics department responsible for? I'll give you an overview of the admissions process, talk about the admissions assessment for economics, personal statements, and then interviews as well. So about Cambridge then, it can be a little bit confusing because you've got the University of Cambridge, you've got the different subject departments, and then you've got those 31 colleges. So what are kind of each of them responsible for and who are they? So the economics department then, they set your course content. So what you're learning about is set by them. All of your lectures, your seminars, any practicals, projects, all set through the department. And your assessments and your exams are also set by the department. So if you're an economics student studying at Downing, or you're an economics student studying at Christ, you are going to do the same exams and you'll be sat next to them in your lectures. Then the University of Cambridge is responsible for the careers advice service. So no matter what college or department you're a part of, you get the same careers advice. And then they also award you a degree. So you get a University of Cambridge degree at the end of your course rather than a Downing College or another college degree. So the colleges then, what are they responsible for? So the colleges do the admissions process. So you need to choose which college you'd like to apply to at the beginning of the admissions process. And then they will look after your application through those couple of month stages. But then once you arrive, the college looks after you academically and pastorally and kind of becomes your home for those 3 or 4 years in Cambridge. And within the college, you get a director of studies, so that's someone who looks after your subject within the college. You get a personal tutor, so someone you can talk to about any issues that you're having. And there's also other people like a college nurse and the college chaplain who look after your well-being. And so the accommodation is mainly on site, so you'll be provided accommodation by the college and dining and recreation facilities as well. Now, there's only one part of teaching that doesn't happen in the departments and happens in the colleges, and that they are called supervisions. So they're small group teaching sessions where you sit down with your academic, with kind of 1, 2, maybe 3 other people for these small group teaching sessions, and you discuss the course content that you've been learning about. They might set you kind of problems and homework tasks and other things like that. And I know Thomas is going to talk to you a little bit later about how he's found his supervisions. So the application process then, the first thing you need to do is choose your course. So hopefully after today, you'll all be set on economics, which is brilliant. And then you need to choose your college, and you can choose any of the 31 with a couple of exceptions. So a couple of them are postgraduate colleges, and a few of them only take mature students, a few of them only take female students. So you need to double check those factors, but as long as they do your course and there are none of those factors are taken into account, then you can apply to any of the other colleges. If you're still unsure or you don't know which one you'd like to apply to, you can also make an open application and you'll be randomly allocated to a college. Then you need to check the admissions assessments and test registration deadlines. So you can't sign up for this yourself, your school needs to sign you up. So you need to make sure that your school know that you're applying to Cambridge and make sure they put you in for that test. Your UCAS application deadline is going to be the 15th of October. So you need to make sure that you make the early entry deadline. Then at Cambridge, we ask you for something called an SAQ. This is just a questionnaire, it's nothing to worry about at all. Basically, the UCAS form goes to all 5 universities and it doesn't ask all the information that we would like to know about you. So the SAQ gives us more information about you that we need to know and would like to know. And then it means we've got the same information about all our applicants. And then some subjects ask for written work to be submitted. For economics Downing, this is not the case. And then you need to sit your admissions test in advance for economics. And then the interviews happen in the first 3 weeks of December, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a couple of minutes. And then in January, you'll find out whether you've been accepted by the college you applied to, whether you've been accepted by a different college, or whether you've been unsuccessful in your application. So hopefully that gives you an overview of the different steps that you need to take. The first 2 and 3 kind of need to be done in year 12, and the others all happen in year 13. So what do we use to assess your application then? So we've got all this information coming in about you as an applicant, and we take everything into account when assessing your application. So we don't look at one thing in isolation, everything is considered holistically. So we'll look at your academic record, your personal statement, your teacher reference, your results from your admissions test, any extenuating circumstances, and then your interview notes and scores as well. Now, at this point, it's important to say what we are looking for in those applicants and when we're looking through that different information. What we're looking for is your academic ability and your potential. That is all we're concerned about. We want to know that you're suitable for the course, and we want to see that you've got a genuine subject interest, because you're going to be studying it for at least 3 years. For certain subjects as well, we want to make sure you've got the right subject requirements, so the right A levels. But other than that, it is just your academic ability and your potential. We are not interested in any extracurricular activities that you're doing that are unrelated to your course or your school or your background. So the standard conditional offer then for economics is 2 A stars and an A, or 41 to 43 points with 776 in your higher levels if you're doing the IB. If you're doing any other qualifications like Scottish Highers or any other international qualification, please do have a look at the website link there and find out what the conversion would be. So the application then, we'll start with personal statements. This is something people get very worried about. So your personal statement is 4,000 characters, including blank spaces, or 47 lines of text. So that's roughly about an A4 piece of writing, just to give you an idea of how much you're expected to write. And it's a chance for you to tell universities and tell us why you want to do that subject and why you'd be good at it. So we want to see that academic ability and potential coming through in your personal statement. We want to see that you're motivated and that you're suited for that course. And we also want to see kind of supercurricular stuff that you've been doing. So as I said, we're not interested in your extracurricular, which is things you're doing outside the classroom, and sort of like hobbies, I guess, so maybe sports or things like that. But what we're interested in is supercurricular. So this is sort of reading around the subject. So anything that you're doing that is subject focused towards your subject, but is outside of the classroom. So it could be listening to TED Talks on your subject, could be reading different journal articles, attending an event like today, and lots of different things. So do make sure you are starting to look at supercurricular activities, because that will really help you get a better understanding, and you can put what you've been learning about in your personal statement. You can also put what you've been learning about and talk about what you've been learning about in your interview as well. So successful personal statements then, they're going to give us specific evidence and examples of things that you've done to increase your interest and anything you've achieved. We want to see that you've gone beyond your school curriculum. So some of you might be studying economics at school at the minute. Most of you probably aren't. So what is it that's brought your interest into economics? And this should generally be kind of 2/3 subject based. But if you can write a really good personal statement, it's also going to help you to clarify that it is the right subject for you, because you are going to be studying it for at least 3 years. So the admissions assessments then, so for economics you do need to sit an admissions assessment, and it's worth saying that these are not pass-fail. There isn't kind of a mark you have to get. We'll take into account scores from across everyone who sat that test, and they'll kind of just be looked at. And yeah, Michael's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the test, but there are kind of practice papers and specifications available online. But what we really want to see in these tests is how you apply your existing knowledge from other subjects and wider reading to new situations, which is the same for the interviews as well. So these are going to take place in the first 3 weeks of December. They'll be conducted by the college that you applied to or were randomly allocated to. And for most subjects you'll have 2 interviews, and these will last around 20 to 30 minutes. And these are going to be conducted by tutors and academics in the college, and they're going to be mainly academic and subject focused. So what can you expect in an interview? Kind of discussions around, they might have discussions around recent academic work, any wider reading or work experience you might have done if it's applicable, visible issues in the wider world, kind of what is going on for your subject at the minute. They might present you with a new scenario and see, because they want to see how you apply your existing knowledge to this new situation. Or you might be given kind of problem, a graph, some reading material in advance of the interview, and then they want you to come in and then discuss that. But what they're really looking for is how you think. So the best piece of advice I can give you is think out loud, talk through your thought process. Even if you don't know the answer, that's okay. We don't expect you to know all the answers, but just talk it through, and then the academics and the tutors can help you through it. So frequently asked questions then, for gap years, yes, it's absolutely fine for you to take a gap year. Please apply for deferred entry if you are planning on doing it though. And if you do apply for maths, then we prefer you to take the STEP exam as late as possible. And then extenuating circumstances. So on that SAQ form that I mentioned before, there's an opportunity for you to tell us about anything that has impacted your education, which was outside of your control. For example, health problems or bereavement. So if that has happened, please do let us know. And even if you're unsure, it's better to put it down and let us know, and we can take that into account when we're assessing your application. So that's kind of everything from me, giving you a rough sort of run through of the application process. If you have any more questions about the application process, please do ask them in the Q&A chat. But I'm going to hand over to Michael now, who's going to talk you through the economics course and what he's looking for in applicants.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Michael Ashby, Director of Studies in Economics at Downing College. So I'm going to start off with the course structure and just kind of run through the content. So the way it works is you have 3 sort of independent years, first, second and third, known as Part 1, Part 2A and Part 2B. In the first year, that's Part 1, you're going to do, everyone does the same 5 papers or modules, and they're all worth an equal component of your mark at the end of the year. So you have microeconomics, which is really your sort of core microeconomics that you're going to build on, not just actually in micro, but also in macro and in other specialist areas throughout your degree. So that will cover consumer theory. So that's really sort of, you're looking at an individual consumer and basically trying to derive a demand curve. Producer theory, you're looking at individual producers, minimizing costs, maximizing profits. And then once you've sort of got out of individual consumers and individual producers, you've got markets of consumers and producers, and then you've got the whole economy with all of the markets and looking at how they all clear, and then you can analyze how changes in one market affect another market, and that's called general equilibrium. The macroeconomics you do in first year is very foundational. You do in quite considerable detail classical and also Keynesian macroeconomics. Now this is really important because if you look at the latest sort of macroeconomic analysis, it's either going to be described as neoclassical or new Keynesian. And what you find is you use modern methods to get you back to very similar predictions and sort of policy prescriptions. And so having this foundational overview is important, but those modern methods actually build on a much more rooted in microeconomics, and without the microeconomics you learn in first year, it would be quite difficult to make any progress with them. There's also a quantitative methods paper, which is maths and stats, half and half. In the maths, it's sort of the key mathematical skills that you're going to need for economic analysis. And then in the statistics, you do probability theory, which is important if you're analyzing decisions made under uncertainty, so decisions over uncertain or where the outcomes are uncertain. And also you look at the statistics and the foundation of econometrics, which is something you come back to in the second year. Econometrics is kind of a whole sub-discipline of economics, and it really is applied statistics. It has a very wide reach in terms of analysing policies and policy changes, which would be outside of what you might classically think of as economics. So you might analyse the effect of school class sizes on educational achievement. Now, you might think that doesn't have an awful lot to do with economics, but actually this is a very difficult question because if you've got different schools having different class sizes, the schools are probably different in other ways as well, and so you've got to work out what's actually causing the what underlying factors are causing the changes in educational attainment. But that's something you would do more in the second year in econometrics. In the first year statistics, you're really just kind of laying the groundwork for that. There's also, to give you sort of a real, and that's the very quantitative side that I've just spoken about, to give you the real sort of spectrum or the real, the full range of what economics can be, there's also a politics paper. So that's, you look at British politics since the Second World War. Economics is a political subject with Ha-Joon Chang, whose books many people that apply have read. You don't have to read them to apply. It's really not compulsory. It's just, that's an observation from personal statements that you really don't have to read whatever you find interesting. And what's the other thing in there? Institutions, the role of institutions in economic growth and development. And then finally, you have British economic history as well. So you do the Industrial Revolution in Britain, and then you get on also to the interwar period in Britain. So that's actually also a very interesting period in British economic history, because you've got, just after World War I, or just going into World War I, you have Britain as the economic superpower in the world, basically the equivalent of America now. The largest net creditor in the world. World War I debt means Britain becomes the largest net debtor in the world. And then you've got all of the complications to return to the gold standard, and then the Great Depression. So an awful lot going on economically, and a very important period really for forming different kind of schools of thought in economics. Just to quickly run over the later years, so you have more compulsory microeconomics and macroeconomics in your second year. So micro, you carry on with the really important foundational stuff. Decision making under uncertainty, which is the cornerstone actually of financial analysis and decision making over time, where you've got outcomes coming over multiple periods, and game theory as well. In macro, you start to actually look in this kind of modern macroeconomics, which starts off in microeconomics, much more foundational, and you carry that on through the third year as well. Econometrics we've sort of already discussed, so that's really about establishing causality, where you've got confounding factors, and also about prediction and making optimal predictions. Then there's an option paper, and there's actually quite a big range of options you can do in the second year, from sort of history and philosophy of economics, more maths and stats if that's your thing, labor economics, trade and development, and there's also the possibility of a borrowed paper from sociology or from politics as well. And then finally, the third year, you have micro and macro again. So you carry on sort of modern macroeconomics with macroeconomic foundations in macro. In micro, actually, you become much more applied. You look at policy evaluation, you look at the economics of optimal incentive contracts, the economics of healthcare provision and healthcare consumption, education provision and education consumption as well. Social cost benefit analysis, so how to value a large infrastructure project, for example, and the theory of the second best, which is optimal policy making in the face of distortions. Then you have to write a dissertation. The dissertation, I think, it can be a bit intimidating because it's 7,500 words, which actually is not that long, but you write it on your own with pretty light touch supervision. You choose the question yourself, you choose everything yourself, and it's entirely a self-directed, well, not entirely self-directed, you have a supervisor, but it's very much a self-directed piece of research, which, as I say, sounds intimidating, but generations have done it and generations have coped with it, and actually, as intimidating as it sounds, it is really interesting that you get the chance to pick something you want to do, something you're interested in, and really do it in a lot of detail and be supervised by a specialist in the field as well. And also great preparation for wherever you go in the future. If you want to go further along the academic route, you're going to get more and more towards your own research. And also, if you want to go to a job, I mean, this is great. You do a research project on your own, sort of quite independently. So you have very important skills as well as the knowledge that you pick up. And then you get 2 option papers, and that is from an enormous range of options: banking and finance, economic theory and analysis. Let's see if I can list them all. Public economics, economics of developing countries, industrial economics, more econometrics, more economic history. You can do politics of Europe, that's borrowed from the politics department, or global capitalism, that's borrowed from sociology as well. In terms of the teaching, as sort of Catriona alluded to, so you have lectures, and they're provided by the faculty. That's kind of everyone goes to them together. And then we also have supervisions. They're organised by me. You wouldn't be supervised by me for everything. You know, most of the time it's sort of you sort of exchange with other colleges. So I supervise. I don't know. For example, I supervise Trinity Hall's macroeconomics, and they're going to supervise my economic history, just as an example. That's in small groups, groups of sort of 3 or 4 usually, and so very personalized. And usually, it's, well, depending on the subject, you're either going to be submitting a problem set or an essay. If it's an essay, you probably the supervision will be more sort of discursive, and it will be more debating maybe your point of view or your interpretation of the literature you've been reading. If it's a problem set, it's probably a bit more going to be the supervisors going over the sort of the right answer, because there is a right answer, but also going over it in some detail. And the great thing about supervisions is that you can cover a lot of ground, because you have a small group, and you know that there are some things that that group has got and you just don't need to talk about, and you can focus on the things that you can spend more time on the things that the groups do need you to talk about and go over in more detail. And also, if you've got a group or a student who's just really interested in that topic and just getting everything right, then you can go beyond the normal syllabus with them as well. So it's a very flexible mode of teaching, and really what makes the Cambridge degree special. In terms of what we're looking for in an applicant, you need to be sort of mathematically strong, because all of the sort of economic models you're working with, by and large, are mathematical. Econometrics has a large mathematical component. Economic history, that sort of analysis, is quite quantitative as well. So you can't really get away from the quantitative side of economics. So mathematical ability is definitely important. But at the end of the day, these models that you're using are simplifications. And you can't model everything, and you wouldn't expect to model everything, because if you tried to do that, it would be intractable. So you need to be able to keep an eye on what you've missed out and how that might change things. And also understand, okay, you've got a mathematical answer, but you've reduced some kind of real world problem down to some equations. Now you've got an answer in some equations, but now you want to bring that back up and put those equations, the different channels, the effects that are at work, back into words. So being able to combine that sort of mathematical ability with the intuitive analysis, actually to get someone who's really good at both is quite rare, and that would be a definite marker of a student that is going to do very, very well in their exams. But that's sort of the ideal profile, if you like. And we'd expect maybe stronger on one side or the other, but sort of able to do both of those. And so in terms of what that means in an application, I guess the evidence of sort of mathematical ability is always good. So any kind of maths challenges you've done, if you've done well in them, it's nice to mention that, or if your school mentions it in your reference. Don't worry if you haven't been entered into any. I mean, not everyone is, so it's not the end of the world if you haven't, because there is the pre-interview admissions assessment as well. And then the analysis side would be coming more from the essay in the pre-interview assessment. So just to quickly go over the assessment, because it's changed slightly this year, it's a 1-hour maths test followed by a 1-hour essay. The maths test is multiple choice, and that's it would be quite hard to guess, I think. I think you can choose 1 from 5. by looking at it, so you are going to have to work through it, but it's to help with the consistency of marking, that it's made multiple choice, and to make sure there can be a quick turnaround. On the essay usually you're given a sort of excerpt from The Economist or the FT, and then you're asked to sort of talk about it more broadly. So really like an A-level economics essay, I think certainly from what I remember of it, that was sort of quite a common question format, but maybe a bit more detailed because it's 1 hour for one essay. So thinking about it in slightly greater depth. So anyway, I'm sure I can see the questions rolling in, so I'm sure there'll be more about what we're looking for in an applicant in the Q&A, but I hope that kind of gives you a good overview for now. And I think I'm handing over to Tom.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Michael. So my name is Thomas. I'm just going to share my screen with you here so I can... Okay, so I'm going to aim to talk today about what it's like to be a student studying economics at Downing College, but I'll try and give an overview of what Cambridge is like in general, what Downing's like in general, and what economics is like in general. So here's my overview. I'll talk a little bit about me, then I'll try and talk about what Cambridge is really like, because I think there's so many different impressions that people have. I want to give you an idea of what it's like once you've lived there for a couple of years and you get to know the place. I'm also going to talk about what it's like to study economics, and Michael's obviously already covered the course, but I want to give you know, some more little details on what it's like as a student. Then I'll talk about Downing and the college in particular and the opportunities there and what differentiates it from other colleges. Then I'll talk about extracurricular stuff and stuff outside of the work you'll be doing. Then a little bit more about Cambridge quirks, and then work-life balance. So here we go. So a little bit about me. I'm from Belfast, as you can probably hear from the accent, and that's where I am at the minute. And for A-levels, I studied maths, further maths, physics, and economics. So what's Cambridge really like? And I kind of thought this would be a good place to start, because before I came to Cambridge, I didn't really know much about it other than what everyone knows about it. And I knew it was super old and there were lots of traditions. And to me, that was quite a scary thing, but also it was a very exciting thing, because I thought, you know, that could be a really cool place to study and a really cool place to have good experiences. But yeah, so it can be intimidating. But what I like about this photo here is that you've got the King's College in the background, which is kind of such a famous picture, such a famous image, and that can be intimidating. But for me, my experience of Cambridge isn't really informed by that, but it's informed by what I do there. So there's a couple of my friends. One Sunday morning after a little hockey match, we decided to go get coffee, go for a walk, and you know, it's all just a bit of fun. And that's the memories I'll have of Cambridge, you know, spending time with friends in a really incredible city with so much history, but it's still a laugh. It's not super serious. It's not super uptight. And I think that's really important to remember. But obviously you can still take advantage of the academic opportunities and all of the history that is there. So what's it like to study economics at Downing? So Michael's already talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to talk about, you know, what's it like day to day? Obviously you have a good few lectures, and they're where you really cover the material. And most days you'll have 2 to 3 lectures, and they're usually in the morning. They might start at 9 or 10, and they'll be at Sidgwick site, which is the center of where economics is based and where the humanities are based in Cambridge. So for Downing, that's about a 10-minute walk or about a 5-minute cycle from Downing College. So I usually get out of bed in the morning, jump on my bike and cycle over there. I'll have a couple of lectures, and then I might go to the Marshall Library, which you can see there on the left, which is a really lovely library. I might grab a coffee in one of the coffee shops on the side, and then maybe I'll do some readings for some of the courses, go over lecture slides, make some notes, or maybe do some of my supervision work. And then usually in the afternoons is when your supervisions are, and you normally have 2 to 3 of those a week. So you'll work on the work throughout the week, and then you'll bring it along with you and you'll discuss them. And as Michael said, you know, every supervisor has a different style, but that's really good because it means you get an opportunity to to hear different points of view and different styles of learning. And it is really unique, as Michael said. You know, you have an opportunity to have your voice, you have an opportunity to ask questions that you find interesting and even lead the discussion and shape how you learn, which is just incredible. But also the thing that I really like personally about the course is that while you do get to study things in detail, you really cover all the cores of economics very thoroughly. There's also an opportunity to look at the history, philosophy, and how economics intersects with things like politics and sociology, which I just find really interesting. You know, one minute you could be working on like a really deep mathematical problem, and the next you might think, you know what, I'm going to go and read a little bit of philosophy. And that, to me, that's really varied and really nice. I really enjoyed that. And it means you never really get bored and you never really feel like you're doing the same thing all the time. So then Downing College in particular, I just think that it is a really important thing that where you live for your university experience. You know, it's 3, 4, however many years of your life. And studying at Downing and living at Downing has just been one of the most incredible experiences because it's just a beautiful place. And that really makes so many memories. And every day when I get up and I walk through Downing, I just have to take a picture of it because it looks different every day and it looks different every season. And I don't think I'll ever live in such a beautiful place again. I always kind of compare it to like a National Trust park because it's so beautiful and it's so peaceful and so big. Also location wise, it's really good. It's really central. It's only like a 5-minute walk into the very center of Cambridge. There's really handy shops nearby. So it's really handy for that. But also, as we've talked about, like you've got the university and then you've got the colleges, and having smaller colleges I've really found has been a very nice thing because it allows you to feel like you have a home because it's a smaller place. You get to know the people, you get to know the community, and when you get back from Sidgwick and you walk back into the college, you really do feel like you're at home. So there's so much to do at Downing, and you could literally never leave Downing and still have 3 years packed of so much to do because there are so many opportunities. They have loads of clubs like chapel choir, jazz band, hockey, rugby, netball, football, boat club, and tons of other clubs that you can get involved with. And these are a great way to make friends, a great way to get your mind off what you're studying and have a little break. One of the highlights for me is the what goes on in the bar, because there's always things organized there in the evenings, whether it's a bar quiz where you just get in with your friends and do some questions, have a good time, or the incredible jazz nights where there's live jazz bands come and play. And you know, if you were in London and wanting to hear a jazz band that good, you'd be paying so much, but here it's just free and it's on all the time. Then this photo here is of Keith's Cafe, and it's one of the really special things about Downing that is kind of a symbol of how strong the community is there. Every Thursday afternoon, the chapel bells ring and students flood out of the library and out of their rooms and come back from lectures and gather, have a coffee and a donut and just chat about what's going on, have a little break, chat about what you're doing this weekend or what you got up to the day before. And it's just a really nice community feeling, a really nice event, which I really like. So yeah, anyway. Extracurricular activities. So as well as within Downing, there are so many things to do within the wider university. It really is full of so many things, which is just great. So for me, I joined the athletics club whenever I came to Cambridge because that was something I wanted to do. I like sport. I did it in school a little bit. But there are also loads of people who've like never done it before and they just choose to join to try it, and they've really enjoyed it. And the great thing about that is that it's an opportunity to meet people from different colleges, different age groups. Like I train with PhD students who are studying like physics and all sorts of crazy stuff who I would never meet if I just stayed in college with my own friends. And I've really enjoyed that. And also through those clubs, the Cambridge wider clubs, they also have social events and lots of different evenings, like pub evenings and things like that. They compete in different places. You get to go to Oxford to compete, and just loads of opportunities to make friends, to make memories and have great experiences. And then there's a photo of me in the Downing Hockey Club, which is a much more easy thing to be a part of and less commitment. And it's just on Sunday mornings we have hockey matches, and they're super fun, really accessible level, and it's just the best fun, which I really enjoy. So what I feel Cambridge provides is an opportunity to explore the passions you already have. So maybe you already play sport, or maybe you're already really interested in politics. You're in the politics society in your school and you want to continue with that. Like, Cambridge will most definitely have opportunities to do that. But also, if you've never done something before, university at Cambridge is a great place to start studying or to get involved in that. And there are always so many people who are trying things for the first time, so you won't be alone in that. Also, some other really good university societies are like the Cambridge Union, where they have world famous speakers every week where you can go and listen to them and ask them questions and engage in that. There's also the Varsity Newspaper, which is a really good quality newspaper. You can get experience writing for them, editing, doing photos. It's really cool. Also, Cambridge has loads of drama, so if you're interested in that, that's another huge area, which I've never done because I don't have time, but I have friends who do that and they just absolutely love it. Then a little word about like nightlife, because obviously that's a big part of some people's university experience, and Cambridge is really great for that. Even though it's a small city, there's so much going on in the evenings. There's lots of live music nights that are organized by students, and there's clubs that play great music. So if that's something you're interested in, Cambridge definitely has a lot to offer there, and you can have a lot of fun. So Cambridge quirks, this is quite an interesting one. It might be something that you've really wondered about because you hear these things, but you don't really know what they are. And there are so many funny little things about Cambridge that when you get there, you're like, what is this? What's going on? And it's kind of these common experiences that you have while you're at Cambridge that give you this sort of shared identity as a Cambridge student, and only other Cambridge students will know what you're talking about when you do it. You've got punting, which is up in the top left there, where you get a boat and you punt down along the river. You always almost fall in, and there's beautiful views of lots of the colleges, and that'll probably be one of the first things you do if you come to Cambridge. Then on the right here, that is a picture from my marriage formal at the end of first year. So the college marriage scheme is super weird, but it's super fun. And basically, when you first come to Cambridge and when you first come to Downing, you'll be assigned two college parents. So maybe a mum and a mum, a dad and a dad, or a mum and a dad, or you might even be lucky and get three college parents. It just depends. And they'll be people who are in the year above you, at least one of whom will have studied the subject that you're studying. And they're just like the perfect person to become friends with and to approach with any questions you might have at any point. I still talk to my college parents about what they've been studying in third year, and they give me guidance all the time. And then throughout your first year, you can choose someone to get married to, and then you have like your college proposal, and you have the college wedding, you all get dressed up, it's super fun. And then when the time comes, when you go into second year, you get your own little college children. So I have three college daughters who are great fun, and they're great friends of mine. And I just think it's a really nice way. One, it's a bit of fun, and also it's really practical, and it's really useful for making sure that when you come to Cambridge, you have someone who you know you can talk to for whatever it is, which is great. And then the bottom here, you might be wondering why there's a Christmas tree in Cambridge whenever we go home at the end of November. But we never miss an opportunity to celebrate, and we have what's called Bridgemas on the 25th of November, a month early, where we all get dressed up, go into the formal hall and have lovely meal. The chapel choir comes in and sings carols, and it's just great. And you can even decide to cook your own meal with your friends in your accommodation if you want, which can maybe not as delicious as the formal meal, but there you go. That's just another really good way to make memories, and something you probably wouldn't get at other universities. And obviously, being me, I had to give a designated slide for formal food, because Downing formals are just incredible. It's like £10 per ticket, but the food is like such good quality. And I've been to other colleges and their food is just, they've got nothing in Downing. And you might think, oh, if you go to Cambridge, do you have to have a formal meal every evening and get dressed up? That's not how it is. You can just go for like special occasions. So say it's a friend's birthday, a group of you might go to formal, or you might want to invite friends from a different college to your college for formal. or whatever it is. So there's lots of opportunities to get dressed up and have fun, and I just really love it. So I had to show you those photos there. And then finally, a really important topic, I think, is discussing work-life balance. So obviously when you choose to come to Cambridge, you come because you want to get a world-class education. And part of that means that you're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to put in the time to make sure you're making the most of it. And there definitely are times when you'll probably feel under pressure. You might have a couple of things due at once, and you will feel stressed, but that's okay, because all of the other students around you will be in the same boat, and there really is a group morale. You know, everyone's kind of getting through it together, and you know you'll get through. So that's okay. And also, the directors of studies and the tutors and everyone in the college knows that it is a big step up from school, and they know that at times you might find that difficult, and they're always there to listen, and they're not going to put any undue pressure on you. And you've been selected to come because they know you're able to do it, and they'll support you the whole way through. But also, while you work really hard, there are times, you've seen all the photos of me doing really fun stuff, there are times to have fun and to let loose and to take time away from work. And I think this is a really nice example. This photo here was just taken on the paddock in Downing, and during exam term, often people will be in the library for long periods of time, but every now and then someone will just come around and say, oh, do you want to go out onto the paddock and play a bit of football or throw a frisbee around? And it's just such a nice way to kind of get some fresh air, blow off some steam, which I think is like a really nice thing about Downing. The space there just makes it so unique. So definitely there is a lot of work, but there's so many opportunities to make sure that's manageable, and there's so many things in place to support you that, for me, whenever I think of my time at Cambridge, I'm only in second year still, but it's by far and away good memories that I have, you know. So anyway, that's me finished for now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it back to Katrina.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Thomas and Michael, for your talks. Thank you for all your questions as well, and those who have sent them in. Do have a look on the Q&A box. We have answered lots of your questions, so do keep sending them in, and I'm going to ask Thomas and Michael now some of your questions that we haven't answered yet. So let me have a look what we've got. So Michael, there's been quite a few questions about A-level further maths, sorry, and kind of is it required, and what should people do around it?
Yeah, so it's not required, but it is a good indicator, and in general, unless it's not available at your school or college, it would be seen as a bit of a concern if you've chosen not to do it. Unless maybe there was a class or something else you really wanted to do. If there's a good reason why you couldn't do it at school or college, that's fine. But I think we would expect, if it was available and a choice for you, you to have done it.
Brilliant, thank you. And what would you say to someone who's kind of weighing up between an economics degree and a maths degree? So what does an economics degree give them that the maths one doesn't?
But obviously they're two very different subjects, and I think what the economics gives you is the sort of the understanding of the economic mechanisms at work behind the models, and in terms of it depends what you're looking to do. If you want to go and do, say, financial research, be a financial economist, there are a lot of mathematicians out there, but there's increasing interest in the sort of economics behind why these relationships exist or are holding. And so I guess economics would give you more of an understanding of sort of what's going on behind the equations and behind the numbers. Obviously with maths, you'll spend a lot more time with the equations, and I guess you'd be able to solve more equations at the end of your degree.
Brilliant, thank you. And when students are preparing for the admissions assessment, what's the best thing that they can do to prepare for the essay part?
Have a look at past questions. This has been running for quite a few years now, this admissions assessment. In general, they seem to take a sort of an excerpt from an Economist article or an FT article, and then ask you to discuss the topic more broadly and discuss the excerpt in more detail. So if you want to practice doing that kind of exercise, then if your school library or your local library, if they have The Economist or the FT, then you can flick through, look for articles that you find interesting, and then try and sort of think more about them. You know, even think of your own essay questions to answer about them, if that's what you're, if you're concerned about it and you haven't had enough practice.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've got a question here. What would be the best thing to do to have a good understanding of most of the areas of economics? Maybe Michael will say something, and maybe Thomas, you want to say something as well?
See, I wasn't, when I saw this on the screen, actually, I wasn't 100% sure sort of what it meant. But in terms of getting a sort of a broad preparation, there's a textbook by Begg, Fisher and Dornbush called Economics, and it kind of, I guess in other universities that might be a first year textbook. Here it's a level between what you've done at school and what you would do at university, but I think that gives quite a good overview of kind of what you've done. It's more graphical and sort of wordy in nature rather than equation based, so it's a bit more accessible, a bit easier to follow, but that gives a sort of a decent technical bridging step between the two things, between school and Cambridge. If you're more interested in the sort of political side, then you can obviously, well, just any kind of newspaper really. Good newspaper would kind of cover that, and how politics and economics kind of intersect with each other, and certainly that was going on this afternoon with the Chancellor's sort of mini budget.
Yeah, and just to follow on from the point Michael was making there at the end, I would say whenever I was preparing for interviews and things, one of the things that definitely helped me, obviously you've got the side where you can get a textbook and get into the nitty gritty detail, but things like The Economist and the FT can be a really good way to explore how economics affects everyday life and how it intersects with politics and things. And also one thing that I mentioned in one of the answers down below was I really enjoyed watching Newsnight whenever I was in my final couple of years of school, because it kind of gave me a template for how to talk about economics and how to talk about politics. And I think hearing politicians and the experts and things that are interviewed on Newsnight gave me some confidence in how to talk in my interview, and I do think that really helped. And also it's just on at like 10:30 every night, and it's interesting, and it doesn't feel like you're working when you're watching it. It's just interesting, so that's a good tip.
Right.
Can I just come back on Newsnight, because I noticed this in December. I think some people come into the interview thinking that it's going to be confrontational in a way that it definitely isn't. And obviously interviews on things like Newsnight, and especially Andrew Neil, they can be quite confrontational, and that's not at all what the interview is meant to be about. You know, in the interview, usually you'll be given questions that we wouldn't expect you to know the answer to, and we want to kind of try and see how you can think through it, but we're also there to guide you through it and see how you respond to that guidance. That's another part of kind of what we're looking for. So if the interviewer sort of interjects with what you're saying, it's not a trap. They are there to help. Yeah.
Great. Talking about interviews then, Thomas, was there anything else that you did to prepare for your interviews?
So other than that, I was lucky enough to have some teachers in school who were willing to do mock interviews for me, which I found really helpful. And so that could be something you could try and explore, whether or not you could get a teacher to sit down with you at lunchtime and ask you some questions. Because I think you can do lots of reading and things, but it's another thing to just be comfortable, like sitting in front of someone and talking, and, you know, filling the room with your voice for like 30 seconds or 45 seconds and just getting comfortable with that. It's not even necessarily about making sure you get every detail banged out in a practice interview. It's just getting comfortable with the idea of having a one-on-one conversation with someone that you might not get in a classroom with like 15 or 20 students. So that definitely helped me.
Yeah, definitely. And just talking to your friends or people who are not interested necessarily in economics and talking to them about it, and kind of if you can explain something to them, then you understand it yourself. So that's good practice as well. Michael, are there any degrees in econometrics?
Yes, I think there are, but not in the UK. I have heard of people majoring in it in places like Holland. Sometimes it's in the name, but I think that's more at master's level than LSE has a mathematical economics and econometrics degree.
Great, thank you. Would a candidate be expected to have a lot of knowledge about current affairs when applying to economics?
It depends what you mean by a lot of knowledge. I think an awareness, but we wouldn't expect people to have the minutiae of the details. And I actually remember, so when I did my interview, it was on the sort of cusp of the Greek sovereign debt crisis, and I was terrified that I would that some big announcement would happen in the day and I wouldn't find out about it, and then the interviewers would ask me about it. This is not going to happen because they are also busy for the whole day and they have no idea what's happened in the news that day. So yeah, in general, you know, so I did actually do an interview once with someone who seemed to have no awareness of the fact there was a financial crisis in 2007, which made actually that question quite difficult, as you can imagine. So some kind of awareness, but yeah, not the ins and outs.
Great. And are there any opportunities to study abroad on the economics course?
Not directly. Thomas may have done something like that, but no, not really. I think Thomas, I think you did the Pomona year before you came.
Yeah, so one really cool, unique thing about Downing is that they actually offer a scholarship. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to talk about this as well. They offer a scholarship to Pomona College, which is this little liberal arts college in Southern California. And I was the recipient of that scholarship in my first year. So instead of coming straight to Downing, whenever I finished school, I went to America for a year and got to study there. And it was like a full ride scholarship. I didn't have to pay any fees. I didn't even have to pay for my flights. And that was just the most incredible experience. They gave me so many opportunities to travel. I was able to study politics, history, French, religion at that college, which is just really cool. So if you do apply to Downing College, definitely make sure you look into the Pomona scholarship, because it was one of the best experiences of my life. So yeah.
And it's not just for economics, it's for I'm pretty sure most subjects. There might be a couple of exceptions, but yeah, but it is unique to Downing. Are there kind of any maths resources that either of you have come across that you would recommend as kind of super curricular activities, and maybe if someone's not doing further maths?
So the economics faculty website, if you go to their admission section, there is a link to further maths support for students who are doing further maths but don't have classes in school. But in terms of the maths resources, I can't really think of anything, because I think the only sort of books I can think of are just too hard. So you're better off just focusing on the A-level material that you're doing in school, because actually that's kind of what you would be expected to know.
Brilliant, thank you. Got a student here asking, will they be put at a disadvantage if they spend half of their personal statement writing about what they did in history and drawing connections between history and economics? If they're
No.
Because they're applying for a joint history and economics at another university.
So that's absolutely fine. On the SAQ, there is a supplementary personal statement part, and obviously you're not all of the course outlines are the same. So if you're applying to a specific course elsewhere, you can tailor your personal statement to them, and then you can kind of use the supplementary personal statement to explain what's happened. That's absolutely fine. It's part of the reason the supplementary personal statement is there. So no, not at all.
Brilliant. There's lots of things coming in about supercurricular and kind of yeah, kind of what people should be doing, which kind of comes back to my talk, I think. Definitely be doing something, but what we're interested in is what you've learned from that experience, not necessarily what you did, if that makes sense. So we've got a question here, someone who might have done a maths challenge, but they've got a bronze award. Are they saying they're less competitive because they didn't get the gold? Absolutely not. The fact that you've taken part is brilliant, and what did you learn from that experience? That's what we want to know about, rather than kind of what the outcome is, if that makes sense. So do take that into consideration for all of your things as well. Similarly, there was a question about kind of debating societies, kind of public speaking. Are those good things to get involved with, would you say?
Well, they're not bad things to get involved with, but you don't have to get involved with them if you don't want to. I think very much, I would guess, I'd still, from the point of view of assessing an application sort of academically, I'd put that down as a hobby rather than a supercurricular activity, which might be a bit harsh. But so in terms of even supercurricular activities, yeah, like you said, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, as long as you're doing something which you can justify as being relevant, and then you can talk about what you've gained from it. So just do something you find interesting. There's Cambridge runs a website called myheplus.com with like worksheets that you can go through. They're quite short. There's several of them on there, and they're all sort of self-contained, which attempt to provide some sort of bridging resources between A-level and university. A lot of the American universities have recorded lecture series that they've put online. They may be a bit tricky to follow because they're aimed at undergraduate students rather than school students. But if you want to do courses like that, you can work through them. Coursera has a very large sort of repository of courses on all sorts of things, and they're free as long as you don't want to do the exam and get the certificate. And you don't need to get the certificate because you can just say in a personal statement that you've done it. So yeah, anything that kind of seems relevant and that you can talk about what you've got from it is fine.
Great. Kind of sticking with personal statements, would you prefer to kind of see depth in one topic, then talking about one topic, or kind of breadth with quite a few different topics and interests mentioned?
That's quite a difficult question. I think in general you would say depth is better, but you need a sort of minimum amount of breadth as well, and then the whole document overall isn't very long, so I guess to get everything in, you kind of need to get it. You probably can't go into anything in that much depth. So yeah, if you can go into detail on one thing, do so, but don't leave out anything that's sort of important or essential in order to do that.
Great. We've got a couple of people looking at the land economy course as well. Could you talk a little bit maybe about the differences between the courses, if you know much about that course?
So I don't know in great detail what the land economy course is. I know there is an economics component, and I think it's sort of microeconomics, macroeconomics, at sort of a level between what you've done at school and what you would do on the economics tripos. But then there are other things. There are law modules. There are some sort of theoretical law modules, land law, geography. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure, I'm afraid.
That's okay.
I can, sorry, hi everyone, I'm Faith. I can quickly jump in on the land economy thing because I know slightly more about it because one of my friends does it. But it's a unique course to Cambridge, and so I would recommend like really looking into their website to try and find out exactly what it is, because it's very specific to Cambridge, nowhere else offers it. But it's kind of a blend of economics and law with a bit of geography thrown in as well. So my friend that I know that does it transferred from her law course to begin to do land economy, and she has lectures within the law faculty with the law cohort, and then they also have specific land economy lectures. So it's a really kind of blended course of lots of different aspects, and I'd recommend, if you want to know more about it, to go and have a look on their website, and because they have lots of really good information about exactly what it is.
Brilliant, thanks Faith. Yeah, so Faith has been answering all your questions in the background while the three of us have been speaking. She's one of our current geography student ambassadors. Okay, on with the next question then. Just trying to see what we've got here. So I've got a question about what are the BAME proportions like of students. Obviously Downing welcomes anyone to apply to study with us, and we do have BAME students. I don't know specifically for economics. I don't know if Michael would know off the top of his head. No. So it's quite a tricky, I don't think we necessarily have a direct number, but please do apply if you're from that background or any background. We welcome anyone to apply to Downing, and we'd love to have you come and study with us. Quite a few people are getting quite concerned about kind of the subjects, A-level subjects that they are doing, and kind of maybe everyone keeps asking me whether this subject combination is okay. What I would say is, I think Michael would agree, is maths is essential. So if you're not doing A-level maths, if you are doing A-levels obviously, that is a problem. The further A-level maths is highly desirable, but if you haven't taken it, that is okay, but we would prefer for you to have taken it. So if you haven't made your options yet, or you're deciding what to drop at AS, we would recommend that you carry it on. And economics at A-level is not a required course. So if you have taken it, brilliant. If you're thinking about taking it, please do look at it, but it's not essential for you to have had it. So if you haven't taken that, that is okay as well.
And if there's a timetable clash with further maths, perversely take further maths. As strange as it sounds, but it is actually going to be more useful to you in your time.
Great. Thomas, a question here for you. You might not know, and that's okay, but someone's wondering if you have any career plans.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not 100% sure yet. One thing I'm definitely looking at is consulting, which is quite a wide field, but that's kind of where you work for companies that help other companies and other organizations make big decisions and reorganize their firms. And for me, that's quite attractive because I think it would be a job where you get to do different things every day and you're working with people and you're solving problems. But I think there was another question there about what careers are done in general with economics degrees. There is a huge range and there's no one right answer to that, but there's banking and finance, consulting is big, but you can also go into like the charity sector. You can do further studying. Michael, I don't know if you have any other examples, but there's loads of stuff. Well, yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, just thinking of this year actually, we've got some slightly more unusual ones. We've got one who's going to do strategy for a low alcohol spirits firm that's launching in the US. One's doing pricing strategy consulting, so I guess more classical economics. Others that I know about are going on to do master's degrees or further studies. So actually, yeah, you've got the quantitative side and you've got the analytical side. So you've got a lot of doors open to you. A lot of people go down, I think probably the most common route is consulting or some kind of banking or finance. But there's also a lot of other things you can do as well.
Brilliant. There's quite a few questions about the admissions assessment and kind of average scores and lowest scores. Are we right in saying that that kind of changes every year, Michael? Everything's kind of taken into consideration.
Yeah, so there's a score out of whatever the test is out of, but then what actually gets sent to us is a score out of 9, and that score is standardized across years. But strangely, I don't know if you, as the applicant, ever get your score out of 9, or if you only get your score on the test. But in terms of score out of 9, we're looking for at least 4.
Great. Someone's asking whether you would recommend they read more difficult economics books, such as Adam Smith or Keynes.
Obviously, these books are quite old, so yes, you can. And in particular, if you're interested in economic thought, then you might want to go and read it from the horse's mouth. I've sort of, ashamed to say, I've got both and haven't really tackled reading them because they are quite large and intimidating. So if you can get the sort of summary elsewhere or something more up to date, you might prefer that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's about reading things that you're interested in as well, and that's the important thing. So EPQ question, a couple of questions have come up about this. If you're doing an EPQ, that's great. Please tell us about it. A good thing to do. If you haven't done one, that's okay. It's not going to form part of your offer. So some universities might offer you a grade drop, for example, if you have done really well in your EPQ, and that's not something that we offer at Cambridge. But you can talk about it in your personal statement. That is a good thing to do, especially if you've based it on economics as well.
Yeah, I think don't panic if your school doesn't offer it. So mine didn't. Yeah, it's not essential. It's, I guess, an extra thing you can talk about, but it's really a bonus. It's not gonna. Yeah, it's not essential.
Yeah. So a question here, are there any books that lots of people include in their personal statements that maybe you would discourage others from including? Obviously, you're reading lots of personal statements.
I don't know if I should answer this. I mean, I wouldn't discourage you from reading it. On the other hand, there's a weekend in November or December where I read about 50 personal statements, and at the end of it, there are certain people I never want to see again. Probably Harjun Chang, I think Tim Harford is at The Undercover Economist. There's, I can't remember, Stephen Levitt, I can't remember his book. They come up a lot. That's not a problem. If you've read something and really got something from it, you can write about it. I think the most frustrating thing is when someone just says, I read this book, and you sort of think, oh, great, but this doesn't really tell me anything. And in fact, it doesn't even tell me if you actually read it. But, you know, say something you found interesting about it. You know, some people claim to have read the entire of Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century, although that seems to have had its moment. But yeah, I mean, just, yeah, I also try and say something about it maybe that is less obvious, that isn't obvious from just, that you couldn't just be picked up from sort of not really reading the book, but kind of reading the blurb and working out what it's about. So something a bit more than just kind of summarizing it.
Yeah, I read Harjun Chang, and I'm pretty sure I wrote about him in my personal statement. So you can get in if you know.
If you're supervised by Harjun Chang, then he loves it that you've read his books. And so I was not at Downing, I was at Peterhouse as an undergraduate, and my college son actually referenced Harjun Chang and was supervised by him, and his thanks for referencing him in his essay was a signed copy of the book that he referenced.
Yeah, it's worth saying that when you're referencing different books that you've read in your personal statement, we are concerned with what you've learned from it. Just emphasising what Michael said, we don't want to see a list, we want to see what you've learned from it and how you're applying that new knowledge to kind of new situations or kind of to the real world. That's what we want to see. And you want to make your personal statement unique, but you also don't want to make it stand out in a bad way. So that's worth saying from an admissions point of view. Couple of last questions then. Michael, I don't know if you're going to know the answer, but do you know what the male to female ratio is for economics?
As a subject, it is about 70-30 male, I think, at application. I don't know, and that should be reflected in the overall sort of undergraduate body. If you think of each individual college, like Downing, we're taking 5 or 6 a year, so it's not, sometimes it'll be more than that, sometimes it'll be less. And in fact, a 70-30 split is impossible with 5. But I think we've sort of, we've broadly stuck to that, I think. At Downing, if you took the 3 years together, it would kind of look like that.
Brilliant. Question here, how would you go about sitting the TMUA exam?
So I've seen questions about this is the version. So I think this is quite similar, and in some ways this is actually used as a bit of a blueprint for the maths part of the ECA. So I don't even know if it's possible to sit both. They may clash on the timetable. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if you'd be allowed to register for both, because I think there is some overlap in the questions. There's certainly overlap in the people that write them. From talking to
Cambridge,
no, it's not. And yeah, I think there is some, now there's some overlap in the questions. So I guess if that's true, you wouldn't be able to sit both exams.
Yeah.
But you may, the TMUA, that includes things like trigonometry, which aren't relevant for the economics assessment. But if you're looking for further practice questions, there is sort of some similarity. So you can look at old TMUA papers as well as old economics assessment papers.
Great. Is Cambridge partnered with any companies that offer degree apprenticeships?
No, this is a short answer.
Good. But it's worth saying that the University Career Centre is very good, and they help all students no matter what the subject they're doing, what college they're part of, and they do organise sort of career fairs where big companies and employers will come in and the students can go and talk to them on a stand and see what offers are available, and Cambridge graduates are definitely very sought after.
There's also the Career Service does one-on-one advice sessions and like CV writing workshops that are really good, and I hear it quite a lot from people that were on my course when I was a student, or that my students now, who get to their 3rd year and then start going to the Career Service and they say that was really helpful, I wish I'd gone sooner. So actually it's something, it is a very good resource and something to make use of.
And it's also something that you have access to even after you graduate. So if 5 or 6 years down the line you decide that your career that you're currently in is not something for you, then you can go back to the Career Service and ask them for help. So they're sort of a lifelong resource, and they are really nice. So yeah.
Great. Last couple of questions, and then we will be finished. Someone following up on my question about referencing books and personal statements, you do need to give us the full title of the book and the author's name. That is important to do. You can't just assume that we know which book you're referring to. So that's good general practice. The STEP exam, it's not necessary for economics, is it?
No, and it's something that is sat after the sort of decisions have been made anyway, usually. So it's not something you can use to boost your application, if you like, but no, it's not a requirement. Yeah,
brilliant. And I think that's probably all we've got time for. Was there any other questions that I haven't got to, Michael or Thomas, that I've missed that you think that I should have asked you?
So I've just seen there's one here that about interviews being in person this year.
Yes.
Or not in person. Oh, and there was something about international students for interviews, so I might as well cover both of those.
Yeah.
So the. Sorry, did you want to?
No, sorry, I was just going to answer it from an admissions point of view, but yeah, so the interviews, whether they'll be online or in person, we can't say at the minute. It hasn't been decided. The university has a panel who is working to decide, but they want to obviously try and minimise the risk of spreading COVID anywhere and minimise travel where possible. But there's quite a long time between now and December when you will be interviewed. And in the next couple of weeks and months, the university will make a formal announcement on what they have decided to do. So at this point, we cannot say either way, but just keep an eye on the website. And actually, it won't affect you either way. You'll have plenty of time, plenty of notice, and you'll be told exactly what you need to do, whether in person or not. So please don't worry about those. Was there anything else to add to that, Mike?
So the overseas interviews, I mean, it's basically, it's very similar process for the overseas interviews. It may be that a Skype interview is offered for overseas students. That has happened in the past, sort of independently of COVID. It may be you're able to be interviewed in your home country, and that's by someone from the economics faculty. It's someone else who kind of does all the interviews in those countries. But again, a similar sort of interview, or you may just be invited to come and be interviewed in Cambridge. It's obviously not clear how possible that will be. And someone also asked about pre-reading, so if any kind of resources would be given to read through before the interview. That's not something we really do or haven't done, so it probably doesn't matter. We have given sort of scenarios. Basically, a question is about a scenario, and then to help you keep track of what we've said, what the scenario is, we tend to give it to you as bullet points in the interview. But if that's online, then we can just make it as like a slide and share the screen. But that's not really kind of essential pre-reading. That's just to help you keep track of what's going on.
Yes, that's probably coming off my talk. Yeah, that talk is very general, gives you an idea of interviews in general, because they're all quite different depending on the subject, depending on the college. They can differ a little bit, but yes, so some subjects might have pre-reading. Great, I think that is all we have time for. Michael and Thomas, would you both like to kind of, as sort of finish off, give a piece of advice, or what kind of advice you would have for the students at this point in their application stage?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say go for it, really. There's not an awful lot to lose by giving it a shot. It doesn't matter what your background is, or, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't know anyone that's ever been to Oxford or Cambridge. You know, they have no kind of special advantage to helping people get in. So just give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, I would definitely say something similar. I remember whenever I decided to apply, it was just like you know what, I'm just gonna go for it, and it will be a learning experience even if I don't get in. And I remember after coming out of my interviews just thinking that was really enjoyable. I really thought that was cool, good experience, and I was kind of just like, even if I don't get in, I'm glad I did that. So yeah, go for it. Look at it as an opportunity to learn, to do reading, to advance your academic interests, and that will help you no matter what you decide to do in the future. Even if you don't study economics, even if you don't study at Cambridge, it will always help. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for joining me this afternoon. Thank you both for your talks, answering all the questions, and thank you to you at home for joining us as well.